No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 331. And breaking right now, the white protesters who were expressing rightful anger and indignation in Essex over the illegal migrant who sexually assaulted a teenage schoolgirl after just 8 days in the country have all gone to jail for longer than the actual despicable cretin who they were protesting against. And the MSM have either ignored this judicial outrage altogether or think it's completely fine. Because this is two-tier Britain, with a two-tier justice system run by activist judges today chillingly exposed by Robert Jenrick.
An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be.
We have a problem. There's a small minority of judges with links to political causes that are compromising the independence of the judiciary.
But now the usual suspects are trying to destroy him, Robert Jenrick, after The Guardian revealed a leaked recording where he complained about not seeing a white face during hours in a Birmingham community that had become a dump.
Was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated.
That kind of language, I mean, you said you're putting your head above the parapet, but you'll know that that kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself.
Well, I'm not going to give any due respect to that journalist, Kamali Melbourne, because I believe he's a race baiter, actually, and I'll talk about that very shortly. If only the MSM were as interested in the blatant anti-white racism of Gary Neville, by the way. That anti-white racism is now being embraced by other figures on the left, even as his own workers speak out in fury about his anti-Union Jack decision.
And I saw them, and there was evidence of these men probably drink a lot. I'm sorry, but just by the shape of their bodies. And I don't care if that sounds controversial. I'm making a judgment on their appearance. Wearing capes, you know, they had the scarves wrapped round as capes.
Oh, I see you.
You know, and I was kind of filming them, and they were giving me gestures, and I just thought, you're saddos, you're absolute saddos.
Seriously, here's the person using the flag as a tool of racism. Here's the person saying we must never let them use the flag as a tool of racism. And here's Gary Neville saying some people are using the flag as a tool of racism.
But what he is actually doing here is speaking as a middle-aged white man who is from a working-class background, who's extremely successful.
You can't.
And actually, he is speaking as someone who understands that part of the world.
He does not.
And he understands that there are people trying to exploit these tragedies, trying to exploit the attack on the synagogue, trying to exploit the attack on the mosque.
So in my Digest X, I'll expose the increasing two-tier system which has seen the Pink Ladies of Essex now officially branded as far-right, while forcing Russell Brand to be silenced on politics, no doubt because he was challenging the narrative too. Then, my superstar panel weigh in today. Founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, and host of the brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, Peter McElvenna. Also coming up on the show today, UK celebrations and hate marches, as the left yet again exposed their evil true colours on the second anniversary of the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. And now the Tories join the hard leftist media by attacking Tommy Robinson over his official invitation to visit Israel. We'll debate that. Then, in the uncancelled aftershow over on Substack, Prince William went white with anger after learning of Meghan Markle's sick Diana death stunt in Paris, as the fake Duchess uses the MSM to try and push back over his sickening stunt. We'll reveal the truth about what happened with our royal mastermind, Angela Levin, and you can sign up to watch at www.outspoken.live. We'll also reveal a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass at the end of the show, the worst Britain in the world. Today, you can vote in the live chat right now on YouTube. But here are your nominees. Kamali Melbourne, who we just saw, nominated by Kaz Quinn, the presenter from Sly News, for trying to ambush Robert Jenrick. Saira Khan, we also just saw her there, nominated by Matt Cassidy, 48. He says white angry men are fair game. We had murder on our streets again, but the MSM have managed to turn men into the problem. And James O'Brien, nominated by Real McCass, who calls him James No Brain. I like that, for defending Gary Neville. So get your votes coming in and get your comments coming in too throughout the show. I will read out the best and the worst before we go today. So stick with us. But now, let's go. Sometimes the sentencing decision in two-tier Britain is so egregious that it's almost unfathomable. Like, that can't be right, can it? Have we really lost our fucking minds to this extent? So, for example, Tommy Robinson being locked up in solitary for 18 months for a piece of independent journalism, while Hugh Edwards didn't spend a single minute behind bars. But perhaps nothing has left me as gobsmacked as this shocking story today being ignored by Britain's captured, corrupt and crooked regime media. The white Epping protesters, and yes, it is relevant that they were white, who were expressing rightful anger and indignation in Essex over this bloke, the illegal migrant who sexually assaulted a teenage schoolgirl after just 8 days in the country, have all gone to jail for longer than Habush Kabuto, the despicable cretin who they were protesting against. And yes, a judge accused them of racism. Now, you'll remember the protests in July, right? We covered them here before anyone in the mainstream media. Essex really did become ground zero of the migrant hotel uprising. And on one night, and it was this particular night, and I'm sure you remember this, the police escorted in and then shipped out, as if they were VIP guests, these hard-left Antifa non-locals from the Stand Up to Racism organisation. And yes, it did spark a small degree of violence. Minor incidents that marred what was otherwise an entire summer of non-violent protest led by the likes of the Pink Ladies in Essex. But look, I think locals had a reason to be angry, right? For months, they had been gaslit about the criminals living at the Bell Hotel in Epping, who they knew were responsible for systematic sexual assaults on women in their local high streets. And sometimes you just need one moment. And for this tight-knit community, who realised they were no longer safe, when Habush Kabuto sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl at lunchtime just 8 days after arriving in the country on a small boat. And I would say that was the spark that lit a fuse. Because Kabuto, right, had been here for such a limited period of time, could be from Ethiopia, Eritrea, or Jamaica, who knows? But what we do know is that we are now paying for him to spend a year, or more likely 6 months, in prison. But shockingly, we also now know, after yesterday's court ruling, that that is less time behind bars than the protesters will serve. In yet another example of the judicial system being used to shut up the little people, you and me, the little people worried about the destruction of our country. They want to terrify us into silence, just like they tried with Lucy Connolly, with an activist judge saying he is satisfied that the trio, the protesters who you see there, and that their acts were racially motivated. So what does that mean? Does racially motivated mean we are not happy about a new migrant from God knows where committing a sexual assault against a teenage girl? Because if so, 99% of the country, regardless of their country, thinks that's wrong. Here's the report from the Sun newspaper. Let's go through this together. 3 asylum seeker riots men have been jailed for longer than the sex assault migrant who they were protesting against outside the controversial Bell Hotel. Dean Smith, Stuart Williams and Martin Pegram, locked up for 6 years between them, were the first people to be sentenced for violent disorder outside the asylum seeker hotel in Epping, Essex. They were among around 500 furious locals who descended on the Bell when Ethiopian national Habush Kabuto was living on July the 17th. Fury erupted after the 41-year-old was charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and an adult woman just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat across the English Channel. Caboto was locked up for a year last month, but each of the 3 protesters were sentenced yesterday to longer jail terms than he received. Chelmsford Crown Court heard that police officers were subjected to sustained attacks for over 4 hours as the demonstration turned violent. Painter and decorator Williams, 36, from Epping, was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months after kicking out at an officer. Kicking out, interesting definition that, and climbing the roof of a hotel. Pegram, 33, a roofer of Wootton, Essex, will spend 2 years and 2 months behind bars for booting a cop, kicking out at other officers and throwing a can at them. Waitrose worker Smith, 51, also from Epping, was jailed for 1 year and 10 months after punching a police shield, not a police officer, but a police shield, and shoving cops. But Judge Jamie Sawyer said he was satisfied this was racially motivated, at least in part. He added, "Each of you, what you did went beyond protest, and that became criminal when you acted as you did." Now, regular Outspoken viewers will know that I'm very clear on this. I abhor all violence. It's not a grey area for me, it's black and white. Yet at the pro-Hamas hate marches, I have seen constant examples of the police being kicked out at, or police shields being shoved, or objects being thrown at them with absolutely no action taken. So forgive me if I see this sentence for what it is: a blatant political warning to white working class patriots to stay in line. You will get very different treatment in court from your opponents. And indeed, the man who I believe should be leading the Tories, or a major part of Reform UK in government, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, has today directly accused, and this is very significant in light of the sentencing, 35 judges of pro-migrant bias. On Talk this morning, he became the only politician brave enough to call out the 2-tier sentences in Essex Watch.
There's a case today that we've looked at on the show already, and I know we're going to talk about judges in a moment. Case today of 3 men who were arrested for committing disorder outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. All 3 of them sentenced yesterday by a Crown Court judge to longer in prison than the man that they were protesting against, who of course was an Ethiopian by the name of Kibatu, who was jailed for less time, Hadush Kibatu, for less time for attempted sexual assault and sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, it doesn't. Look, these are examples of the growing sense of 2-tier justice in this country, where people can be sent to prison for a sentence of 31 months for a reprehensible tweet, but then a bloke in Hull who's got 100,000 child sexual abuse images on his laptop is told by a judge that he deserves a second chance. Do you remember that guy outside the Turkish consulate the other day who grabbed a knife, charged out onto the street and started slashing a man who was burning a Quran on the street, and he spat on him and kicked him, and he was let off without even going to jail? I mean, something is going badly wrong in our criminal justice system where we're seeing these things happening. We've got to change this. We want consistency so that people can have absolute respect about the independence of our judiciary and the way that you're going to get treated equally under the law.
Indeed, Jenrick called out 2-tier justice on stage in his conference speech in what I think was the only moment of any hope for the Tory party this week.
What have I got in this box? Well, don't worry. I'm not about to do a Michael Fabricant tribute act. This is actually serious. For those of you at the back of the room who can't see, I have here a judge's wig. It's something we should all respect and revere. When a judge dons a wig, it signifies the transition from their everyday personality, their identity, to that of a legal arbiter. It's a visual representation of the judge's role as an unbiased mediator, focused solely, only, on upholding the law and delivering justice. An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be. And that is what the vast majority of judges in our legal system do. They wear the wig. They respect and revere it. And that is why, in turn, our legal system is respected and revered all around the world. But we've got a problem.
Now, I caveat all of what I'm about to say by making it clear that I think the Conservative Party probably is finished. I can't ever see a day where I would personally vote for them again, and I didn't at the last election. But that was a great speech. And the Tories must just make Robert Jenrick leader now and be done with it. It was funny, actually. I had just been last week to a New Culture Forum event, and I was walking through Westminster on my way home, and I actually bumped into Robert, who was on a run, and he showed me his phone, and he was watching other famous conference speeches. This particular one was delivered by Tony Blair, because he knew that today's speech had to be one of the moments of his career. And it was, because I believe he is now the only hope of saving the Conservatives from total political extinction. And the worrying thing is the fact the party can't see that. Indeed, it probably proves it isn't worth saving in the first place. But the thing for me about Robert Jenrick is he is shifting the Overton window on so many levels. He is moving Reform UK to the right. That matters. And by calling out our broken justice system, I think he's going to do something incredibly important, and it is something I support regardless of party politics, because as it stands, we are all at risk of being locked up by these activist judges.
The country has some of the best lawyers, barristers and judges of anywhere in the world, but we have a problem. There's a small minority of judges with links to political causes that are compromising the independence of the judiciary. Until now, they've been kept a secret. But the research conducted by my team and I have uncovered it. And what I'm about to tell you will shock you. Over 30 immigration judges who sit in courts and tribunals like this one have links to Open Borders charities. And these are the men and women who get to decide who stays and who goes.
And what I really respected is that Jenrick then brought the receipts.
Let me give you an example. Before his appointment, Judge Symes volunteered for bail for immigration detainees. Even after his appointment, he takes public positions on social media on illegal migration proposals. And he even advertises his judicial office to drum up business for his immigration advisory services. Or take Judge Heaven. She spent 5 years before she became a judge volunteering for bail for immigration detainees. And even after becoming a judge, she took to social media to celebrate the defeat of the government's Rwanda plan. These people should have no place in our justice system. But my research has shown these are not isolated examples. The line between adjudication and activism is being blurred every day. If judges want to step into the political space, they should staff a parliament. It's time for transparency and for reform, so the public can have confidence that their judges are truly independent.
But we know what happens, right? We know what happens when there is a threat to the deep state or the establishment, be it from Tommy Robinson or Katie Hopkins. They try and take them out by whatever means necessary. I mean, Nigel Farage was in court today, for example, giving evidence against one of the migrants who has directly threatened his security. And a takedown attempt is now what's happening with Robert Jenrick too, which is why I think we should actually be very interested in what he is doing. And you'll note, by the way, I haven't spoken about the Conservative Party conference all week. I think it's been totally irrelevant, but I don't think Jenrick's speech was irrelevant. And that's why, ahead of the delivery, The Guardian newspaper, via a leaked recording, tried to make out that Robert Jenrick was a racist. Watch.
This leaked recording which has come out today, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm sure you don't think there's anything wrong with it, but have a listen to this.
in Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter, and it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
And I think a lot of people would sympathise with what you just said there. We were speaking to a Muslim lady the other day who said that she absolutely accepts that there are Muslim ghettos in this country.
Yeah, well, I don't resile from those comments at all, and obviously it was The Guardian who stuck them out there.
Of course.
We want to live in a country which is well integrated, where people are living side by side. We don't want segregated pockets of our towns and cities. We don't want ghettos in this country. I want my kids to be growing up alongside their fellow Brits of all skin colours and faiths. And I'm afraid that hasn't happened in recent years. This is a problem that's got worse in my lifetime, not better. In the last 20 years, there have been at least 6 major reports into the integration failures of our country, including by very, very prominent people like Baroness Louise Casey. People don't do anything about it.
And of course, this is absurdly hypocritical coming from The Guardian, given The Guardian itself runs articles headlined, "Why are big festivals like Glastonbury so white?" The elite class all jumped on board. The grievance train beep beep as they always do, with Dan Hodges posting, "We can and need to have a debate about integration, but if Robert Jenrick can't do that without resorting to simplistic and lazy I didn't see a white face rhetoric, then he's got no business being in politics." So, okay, he should just leave politics altogether, according to Dan Hodges. Narendra Kaur added, Robert Jenrick makes an undeniably racist remark, and Kemi Badenoch rushes to contextualise it. This is exactly why political parties use women of colour to push through blatant racism and elevate them to senior positions only to serve as the black-brown faces of conservative bigotry. Sanitising their racism, I'd add reform, but they don't have any women of colour, as far as I'm aware. This was the moment on the British Bashing Corporation Narendra was referring to.
It's a factual statement. If he said he didn't see another white face, he might have been making an observation. There's nothing wrong with making observations. But what he and I both agree with is that there are not enough people integrating. There are many people who are creating separate communities. I'm very worried about what is happening in Birmingham. I'm very worried. Well, I wasn't there, so I can't say how many faces he saw. But the point is that there are many people in our country who are not integrating. I heard that one of the MPs of that area was accusing him of racism. I completely disagree with that. I want to make that very clear. In fact, I'm quite worried about these sectarian MPs who've been elected in Birmingham. Very, very divisive politics. People who are more interested in talking about Gaza than what's happening in the UK.
Okay, but this is hilarious, right? So first the BBC tried that hit job. Then, look at this from Christian Calgie. So Jenrick's comments trying to whip up outrage. They went to interview ethnic minority locals and they agreed with every word. Obviously, it's buried right at the end of the article. So I went to the end of the article and this is brilliant. This is so brilliant. Malaj Khan agreed with the description of the area as a slum and said he was not offended by the MP's comments because he felt they were true. Mr. Khan said he only saw Asian and black people, adding, "I never saw a white face around here." He said that there were white people in the area, but they tended not to be British. So that was all the BBC could find in their failed hit piece on Robert Jenrick. I was actually impressed too to see senior Tory Claire Coutinho not give in to the hate mob. She wrote, "We're a majority white country. If you walk through an area and don't see a single white face, it is a sign that integration has failed. We cannot become a series of isolated enclaves with communities that do not know each other. That is a divided nation, not a strong one." But of course, it was absolutely no surprise that it was Sly News that tried the ultimate hit job on Jenrick today, but their hopeless, hard leftist presenter Kamali Melbourne was actually, in the end, left totally humiliated. Watch.
You said you're putting your head above the parapet, but you'll know that that kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself trying to shut down.
What did I do wrong?
Legitimate
I'm not shutting you down,
and
Rob, but we've been talking
debate.
about it for at least 5 minutes.
It is, because what you are implying is that you can't say comments like that. And if we live in a country where politicians or members of the public cannot debate whether there is due integration or not, then that does give fuel for extremists. That does give rise to the far right. So you must not take fair and reasonable comments and try and use them to shut down a debate that this country needs to have. We have been having this debate off and on for decades, and every time people try and raise these issues in a fair and reasonable way, with all due respect, journalists like you pop up and try and knock those people down. And that is the reason why we don't live in an integrated country.
It's not my opinion necessarily,
is the reason why,
Robert, because it's also
the reason why
the mayor
terrorist attacks
of the West
happen,
Midlands said, Andy
because
Street,
people
you
are
were
not
wrong.
stepping up and taking the action that's needed.
Andy Street said that you were wrong as well, but we can move on.
He just had nothing left to say. I mean, he's a terrible presenter, right? But he had nothing left to say. So that is what we need. Frontline politicians pushing back at the ludicrous way the MSM throws around these terms far right or racist to shut down any debate. This was good too. Jenrick managed to ignore Emily Maitlis of the fake news agents 5 times at conference. Watch.
About this loving with Lord Heseltine.
Look, I like all the Conservative greats, and he was someone who really fought for the party in the past. And my message to the conference today, amongst other things, was we've got to stand up and fight.
But he has raised
Take inspiration from people who fought the fight.
But he has raised concerns about some of the language over asylum.
Well, we don't agree on everything, and that's very clear. I want to secure our borders. I think a country that doesn't have strong borders is not a country at all. That's why we're leaving the European Convention on Human Rights.
And your reaction to the your reaction your reaction to the overnight reaction to your comments about those.
I was very clear that I want to live in a well-integrated country where people are living side by side, a strong sense of national togetherness. That's what we really want.
So a plea for diversity.
It's a plea for unity, actually. That's what matters to me.
Was your language wise? Was your language wise?
I really.
Was your language
to get through.
Removing activist judges. Can you just explain why that's
We actually also need some British politicians like Tony Abbott. So he is the ex-Aussie PM whose pluck and front did actually manage to stop the boats. And look at how he deals with the BBC.
On the border problem, as you say, should this party, if they're in government, do what Australia did, or is that not possible? Because you think of the amount of waters around Australia, it's not like the English Channel where there are basically no international waters.
That's correct, but you could certainly pick up people in the English Channel, hold them on some kind of a mothership, and send them back to the land from which they've come on some quiet and moonless night. And I think there are all sorts of things that a determined government could do to absolutely stop these boats once and for all.
But in Australia, obviously there was Pauline Hansel, but you didn't have Nigel Farage in Australia. He's a formidable challenge to the two main parties, isn't he?
Look, I don't deny that, but in the end, you've got to be able to implement policy. And I think that the Conservative Party here in Britain has 2 centuries of governmental experience. They've got the muscle memory to be a very effective government.
But I mean, what hope do we have when Tower Hamlets has now officially decided to declare the brilliant Pink Ladies and the excellent patriotic Raise the Colours campaign as far right? Watch this explanation from Lauren the Insider.
I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? Take my last fucking cent, government. Tax me more, but you will not take my free speech, and you will not weaponise people in power to try and brand the Pink Ladies right-wing extremists, right-wing terrorists. This is shocking. And why at 38, as a mother of 2, am I sat in my house thinking, I do not want to live in my country anymore because it is not safe for me, and it is not safe for my mum, and it is not safe for my grandma, and I've had enough.
And indeed, after 2 years of being targeted directly and brutally by the deep state for questioning the political narrative, yesterday Russell Brand appeared to admit defeat by seeming to pause his show.
So I'm going to take some time off and think about what to do next. I feel like, you know me, my ego will drag me back in front of a camera before too long. You know what I'm like. I'm going to take this opportunity to cultivate a deeper relationship with God, to reflect on what's happening in this culture, and to see how, you know what they say is where what you have to offer meets what the world needs. And if I have nothing to offer that the world needs, then that will take care of itself, won't it? I'll just maybe get a little cabin somewhere and be with my beautiful, beautiful children. Anyway, so I'm going to take some time off. We'll see. If the world needs my voice, it will find a way of getting it. Well, it's not like who knows, it might not be a long break. I'm going to have a little break. I'm going to have a little break and continue and pray because, it can't just be sort of this continual futile squabble.
Now, that's sad and worrying to me. And you'll know, if you've followed Outspoken for a long time, that I agree with Russell Brand on a lot. I disagree with Russell Brand a lot, but it is not the point. This is a man who, from the moment he decided to speak out against the official narrative, has just been battered and broken down by the deep state week by week, month by month, year by year, to the point where he looks like a goddamn broken man. Yes, he was very impacted by the death of Charlie Kirk, as were we all, but I just think what has happened to him, and of course he is going to face trial in this country, and let's hope that is a fair process. But it needs to be a wake-up call to a lot of people, because Russell Brand is just like the new Katie Hopkins or the new Tommy Robinson. I also have to ask an important question today. Why has Jihad al-Shami, our latest Islamist terrorist, so quickly slipped out of the headlines with only one intrepid reporter? And this will surprise you because I'm going to give this intrepid reporter a lot of credit today. He works for the left-wing Guardian, but he is called Josh Halliday, and I give him credit for his diligence for actually bothering to look into the very obvious warning signs that were yet again missed by the authorities before last week's deadly synagogue attack. He's done this, the other newspapers haven't, so well done. The headline: concerns about apparently fanatical interest in Islam shown by Jihad al-Shami's family member were reported, The Guardian has been told. So this is an important report, again, completely ignored by the rest of the media because it doesn't fit the narrative, but credit to Josh Halliday of The Guardian for going closer than any other mainstream journalist has. He reports neighbours of the Manchester synagogue attacker reported concerns to police about a family member being radicalised and attempting to preach the Quran to local children, The Guardian has been told. Police have said Jihad al-Shami did not appear to be known to counter-terrorism officials before he attacked a Heaton Park synagogue, leading to the deaths of 2 worshippers on Yom Kippur. However, people who knew the family said on Monday they had concerns about the apparently fanatical interest in Islam shown by the killer and another family member in recent years. One neighbour said everything changed during the COVID pandemic when Shami and the other relatives started wearing traditional Islamic dress, holding private gatherings in the garden, and attempting to preach the Quran on their quiet suburban street. A neighbour told The Guardian, "They just started wearing all the robes and everything. I thought one relative was being radicalised because he wouldn't speak to us for a bit. He was coming up the road preaching to kids about the Quran. It was quite intimidating. It was intrusive." The neighbour, who did not want to be named, said she was really concerned and reported it to Greater Manchester Police in the summer of 2020 or 2021. "I would never do that if I weren't concerned," she said. The disclosure, The Guardian reports, is likely to raise questions about the extent to which these concerns were investigated before the attack last Thursday. One witness reported hearing him shout, "This is what you're going to get for killing our children," as he attempted to break into the building armed with a knife. Shami was shot dead by police after the attack. They said the followers of Shami and the family would congregate in the family's front garden. They didn't have any white friends. I thought, what the heck is going on? It wasn't just praying in the garden, it was private and secret. Neighbours also claim that police had visited Shami's family home earlier this year, apparently because of safeguarding concerns. Shami told one resident a few months ago that his partner had apparently moved out. He apparently did not know where they were now living. The Guardian has also been told that Shami became reclusive after suffering what they describe as brain damage. Now, I don't like this angle, when he fell off a cliff about 20 years ago when he was a teenager, because this is the whole, it was a mental illness thing, it wasn't an ideology thing. Jihad had a bad accident, said one neighbour. He fell off a cliff and got airlifted to London. He had massive head injuries. It was horrific. You didn't see much of him after that. He became quiet and reclusive. The Guardian revealed on Friday that Shami was on police bail under investigation for an alleged rape when he attacked the synagogue about 2 miles from the family home last Thursday morning. And so kudos, congratulations, credit where it is due. I do wonder if the Guardian feels they can do this reporting because they are on the left, and maybe the rest of the mainstream media thinks that if they were to report the truth about what was going on at the Al-Shami home, which looked to me like very clear radicalisation listening to that report, they might be accused of being far right or racist. And we know what the police and the judiciary now spend most of their time on, attempting to scare white Christian Brits worried about the Islamist takeover of their country from protesting or posting on X. Now, the Superstar panel. And let me bring in Peter McElvenna, host of the Brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, and Alan Miller, who is the founder of the Together Declaration. So look, there's a huge amount to go at today, but I want to start, Alan Miller, with this breaking news from The Guardian, the left-wing Guardian, which has actually decided to look into Jihad al-Shami and not just accept what the police told us, which is that, oh, no, we had no evidence of any radicalisation and, he hadn't been reported to the Prevent programme, while not telling us, Alan Miller, that this is a bloke who was out on custody after a rape accusation, and now it appears had been reported to the police by neighbours for extremist behaviour. So yet again, Alan, we are not being told the full truth.
Well, I think it's true, Dan, that we're not being told the full truth. But I also think it's important that we focus on the specifics. Obviously, a charge of something is different to a conviction. So that's one thing that's there. And if we were to apply that rule to everyone, then it would be problematic under law. And it is important, in light of your comments and important discussion around the two-tier concerns, that it is universally applied to everyone. But I think where the big concern in Britain is that for a long time now, we've not been able to have even a discussion, as some as your coverage on what Robert Jenrick and others has been, about the significant challenges to Western democracy, the Enlightenment values of privacy and freedom, and tolerance and rights, and the attack and the assault on that, and the elevation of the idea that both at school and university, that nothing Britain or the West has done has been any good. It's been all racist and disgusting and a self-hatred. And in that climate, and in the climate of our institutions as well, where DEI and ESG is promoted and elevated, the mere attempt to engage with some of these questions and address them gets you put into a certain category. And we face an existential question in Britain and I think internationally, which is that, are you for the values of the Enlightenment? Or are you opposed to them? And have we created a climate in which there's been a flattering of those who hate and despise those values? And I think that's the backdrop to what's going on. And I think the grave concern when we see a continuation of a two-tier approach to protesters or to, the judiciary, or to how things are covered in the media, and that we need an even-handedness and a kind of universal approach to that. And I think at the same time, we need to get very real about everyone who wants to shut us down and suffocate us or terrify or terrorize us.
Absolutely. And I agree with all of that. I really do. But Peter McElvenna, at the end of the day, this was an Islamist terrorist who did kill 2 people, or at least led to the deaths of 2 people. I know there's some confusion over, did the police accidentally shoot one of the people behind the door? But at the end of the day, they wouldn't be dead if it wasn't for this man, Jihad al-Shami. And Peter, I put it to you that the mainstream media still spend their days. I mean, we heard it from the Sunday Times last week, trying to dig up information about Tommy Robinson's school days nearly 3 decades ago. Why are we not trying to find out everything about this man, Jihad al-Shami? I want to know. You know, if you know something, if you were at school with this guy, I want to know. I want to know how this man, who we gave everything to, right? We gave everything to, from Syria, comes to this country and turns on us. And I find it quite interesting that the only reporting about that is coming from The Guardian, because they're probably the people who aren't worried about being accused of being racist or far right.
No, exactly. And we have a problem with these pesky British citizens. Oh, sorry, someone born in Syria. Oh, someone born and steeped in the Islamic faith.
Yeah,
and then
Syrian.
You look at that.
Can we just say Syrian? He is Syrian, yes, with a British passport, but Syrian.
So we welcomed him in. Our government, our institutions accepted this person in as someone who was positive for British society. But it was interesting, The Guardian, they were talking about the issues they had with jihad, and they referred twice to he was preaching the Quran to children and preaching the Quran on the streets. Is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, if you're going out preaching the Bible or preaching the Gospels, that could be a positive thing. That's what I would say. So they seem to insinuate preaching the Quran was a negative thing. And I find that interesting coming from The Guardian. They were dripping that in as a negative issue within him. And I think we would really want an open and proper debate. But of course, we can't have an open and proper debate because it's a fear of engaging, as Robert Jenrick said, of maybe those areas in society that don't want to integrate and have a ghettoized society. And only when we have an open conversation, maybe of the animosity between the Islamic faith and the Jewish faith that goes back 1,400 years, maybe we would better understand the clash that we face and then be able to address that issue.
It is the 2nd anniversary of the October 7 terror attacks. And unfortunately, the past 24 months have actually resulted in more hate, more intolerance, and more hard-left violence on the streets of the United Kingdom. The behaviour from the hard left today has been as despicable as you can imagine. Like Liverpool University deciding to host a Palestinian bake sale to celebrate the fact, as Nicole Lampert put it, the fact that there was a Hamas massacre which killed 1,200 people, mainly civilians, and saw a further 250 taken hostage. As my former colleague Colin Brazier wrote, what Hamas did 2 years ago tomorrow in Israel was a species-level degradation, a low watermark in the story of human cruelty. And at this university, this British university, students will mark it by selling cakes. But this is something that's now in our face all the time, right? If you do not sign up to the hard left messaging around a genocide in Palestine, you are going to be targeted, including, by the way, Paula London. Now, do you remember Paula London? She is a right-wing commentator. She has appeared here on Outspoken before, a regular on GB News, who posted this very shocking encounter at her own gym today. Watch this.
Kids being shot. Try and have a nice work out in the gym and this anti-Semitic man is being very rude to me. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. Today is the anniversary. Yeah, you're an old man. You should know better. This is October the 7th, the anniversary of what happened. You should be ashamed of yourself. You shouldn't be wearing that here.
60,000 you slaughtered.
How?
60,000.
No, that is called in relation to what happened on October the 7th. Shame on you for wearing that.
I'm talking about
1948.
1948.
Get away from me! You fucking hit me, you would have been in serious trouble!
80 years!
Get that man away from me!
80 years!
Can you get him away from me?
You get away
he's
from me!
standing in my space, if I have to push him, I will!
You come on, then push me!
If you touch me first, you touch me first, I will!
And I'll get the cops, go on, push me!
You should be ashamed of yourself on the anniversary of what happened!
Push me! That's why I'm wearing it!
How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
Give the Palestinians a break!
How dare... Give them a break!
Yes!
Have you seen what
Do you see what they're doing now?
Shut up.
You silly
You
cow.
should be ashamed of yourself, and it's against the
You
law.
silly
It's
cow.
against the law.
It is not.
To support Hamas.
I'm allowed to buy
It's
opinion.
against the law to support
I didn't
Hamas.
say.
Just imagine doing that on the anniversary of a terror attack. And I can understand why Paula London was so outraged by that. And good on her, by the way. Good on her for just going for it. And what about this woman in London who it turns out, by the way, we've just learned is a PhD student called Nadia Yalhom, who is married to a Palestinian actor. What about this cretinous woman cutting down the ribbons? Now, remember, these ribbons simply mark the hostages taken by Hamas. They are not political in any way. Watch.
People who video people. What's your name? What's your name? Feel so proud of yourself. What's your name?
No, you're not going to do this.
Not going to do what?
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are.
You're doing something that is.
If I am, then call the police. You call the police and you let them know that you have an issue with this.
You disgusting little human being. You're disgusting.
I think condoning a genocide is disgusting.
Oh, yeah, so we support genocide. Oh, yes.
And so.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's what this is.
No, it's not.
What? Ribbons for people who have been imprisoned, abducted. Yeah, we're going to show the world what you're doing. You're going to be famous.
Yeah, you would love that.
I'm
That's
a
why you're doing
journalist.
it.
I work for a national newspaper. This is going straight to the Daily Telegraph.
Well, she is famous now. There she is, unmasked PhD student who cut Israeli hostage ribbons, is married to Palestinian actor. As Starmer condemns the October the 7th protests, the woman captured cutting down yellow ribbons for Israeli hostages from a memorial in London is married to a Palestinian actor. Nadia Yalhom, who lives in North London, used scissors to brazenly snip the memorial bands. She declared that the ribbons were declaring genocide. Heidi Backram also pointed out, actually, before we get to her, let me show you young Bob, because he has just been at King's College University in London today, and this is what's going on. Calls for the Intifada.
Just a further strain on the taxpayer here. We've got several territorial support unit vehicles in protecting the student union walkouts, and there's a lot of them. There's always a disproportionate amount of them here just because the media coverage is so high. So these student union hippies are costing the taxpayer a lot of money. On the anniversary of October 7th, the student unions across London have decided to do a march out. Now, for me, it just seems like a bunch of temper tantrums, toys being chucked out of the pram because they're not the centre of attention today. I mean, you could have perfectly took another day out your calendar and decided to protest then, but you decided out of all days to decide to protest, you're doing it today. Of course, it's on the anniversary of a terrorist attack. A few days before that, there was a Manchester terrorist attack on a synagogue, and it's also close to the anniversary of the Battle of Cable Street. So if they're not the ones receiving the attention, they have to cry about it.
And Heidi Backram posted, my husband, Adam Mannett, was just speaking about the murder of his relatives on the October 7th event at Sussex University. Some students were stood around laughing, so he called them out. I'm talking about someone in my family dying. Is that humorous to you? They looked sheepish and claimed to want to listen. They didn't. After a minute, they slunk away. The dehumanization of dead Jews is so intense that people laugh. That's what leads to violence at synagogues, and she captured what happened on video.
The footage we have and all the details that I'm telling you is because of, is there something funny? I'm talking about somebody of my family dying. Is that humorous to you? I'm asking, why are you laughing?
Listening to you.
Please, listen. Thank you, respectfully. We know all these details, and I can recount all these details because it was live streamed.
And look at this, on the anniversary day, a new video has been released featuring a whole load of celebrities, like a former star of Little Mix, calling for an all to London protest this Saturday. And of course, this was all timed around the release. At the same time, are we really meant to trust our Home Secretary that she's trying to get a handle on the hate which is sweeping our country on a now almost daily basis? As Chris Rose pointed out, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has no issue labelling right-wingers as divisive. Here she is, helping to stoke the very division she now claims to be against. How can anyone, Jewish or not, trust someone like this to protect them? An awful and tone-deaf appointment. Well, I don't trust her. I don't trust her. And I do want to remind everyone what our Home Secretary really is. She is this woman.
Many of the MPs, particularly on the government benches, had to stand up and say, I have received many emails from my constituents about this issue. So please, keep up the pressure on your members of parliament. Go to their advice surgeries. Take 20 people with you and ask them to justify their views on Palestine and on Gaza. And if they say they support Gaza and support the plight of the Palestinians, ask them to evidence it and to take some action to show solidarity. That's how we can make a difference, because Israel's actions, its killing of children, its bombing of schools and hospitals, must be condemned without equivocation. We know what they've done is wrong. If David Cameron fails to speak out, that is a moral outrage. He may stay silent, but we will never stay silent. So let out an almighty roar and tell this government we will not stay silent until the Palestinians are free!
We cannot trust her. It's all crocodile tears. It is all talk. To my superstar panel, Peter McElvenna of Hearts of Oak and Alan Miller of the Together Declaration. Alan, look, we are free speech absolutists, right? So they can do this, but what they have also done is reveal their true evil.
Well, concepts are good. So there's so much in your show, Dan, that's so important. And I think we're at a very critical juncture here. And I think that it's very clear across the board that ideas that have been in the ascendancy and have become popularized are partly responsible for suffocating what has been best in Britain, right? And so I suppose the question about evil is one thing. I think the question about what we've seen in our streets in the last couple of years, and the fact that people have been afraid to deal and tackle with things like the rape gangs and many other issues for fear of being called racist or to address issues, and the fact that the Labour Party, this government, is playing around with the idea of creating an Islamophobia law. All of these things are deeply concerning. But it's also the fact that we've got some people, like in the tragedy of Charlie Kirk, who we should remind ourselves wanted everyone to speak freely, that in the reaction, in the horrible, disgusting, you could call them evil reactions to Charlie Kirk, who were celebrating that. Well,
I think it is. I think it is, Alan.
This point's important, Dan.
Yes.
Like the people who are celebrating and saying they'd like to see more of the October 7th and a continuation of that. But the point is that in the reaction to the reaction, people can also end up becoming very vociferous and shutting down speech. And we're at a real difficult point. And I think that the way that we celebrate and shine and show freedom is to uphold it. And then say, if people are actually going to go beyond speaking or, there's very clear rules about incitement, but we're seeing more laws being made. We're seeing protests being outlawed. That will be on all sides. 1 minute it will be one group. The next minute it will be farmers. The next minute it will be your show and us. And that we have to uphold and defend. We have a duty to do all the people that died for our freedom, for our ability to protest peacefully, not with violence, for our ability to address these issues. And that in the reaction and the emotion that I understand, right, that is coming up from people, but we run the risk that, like, not on all, let's call it, lots of different people are calling for people to be silenced and shut down or go after them. And I think that we have to be very measured in this, and we have to be robust. And it's not that we're being woolly or liberal or whatever the term wants to be. It's actually very difficult to be a free speech absolutist and argue that we are adults and we must hear these things and see these things. But equally, to be able to be critical, to be able to ridicule, and also to make distinction between what is speech and what are actions, and to use the law, not create ever more laws, but use the law that the laws that do exist to stop people who are attacking us and want to attack us, and also to use our speech to demonstrate and show and illuminate those people who want to do that. So in that respect, I think that's essential, and that we have the public be able to do it, and we don't allow that to be shut down by anyone.
Totally, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I am being very clear about is that we are seeing a lot of evil. Because I believe celebrating death, even of your opponents, is evil.
Yeah.
And I believe cutting down ribbons, which are literally meant to represent people who are being held hostage, is evil. Yeah. And I actually also believe that that man in the gym confronting Paula London wearing the T-shirt "Being Against Genocide" is not anti-Semitic on the anniversary of October the 7th, following a terror attack that has killed Jewish people, meaning that Jewish people are fearing for their lives in the United Kingdom. I believe that is evil. Now, I'm not saying it should be shut down. I'm not saying any of these people should be arrested, but I do think they do illustrate true evil. And Peter McElvenna, I was speaking about this with my fiance actually last night, and I was just thinking, my God, like, just imagine for a second if we had watched on the right the shooting of Owen Jones in the same manner that we watched the shooting of Charlie Kirk. I mean, Owen Jones, I think, is probably my political enemy, right? My political nemesis. I disagree with him on everything. He has been personally disgusting to me. He has tried to get me cancelled and jailed on total lies. I'm sorry, I would be utterly sickened. I would be horrified. I would be distraught if I saw that type of political violence against him. The left are celebrating, are cheering, are clapping. Like, let's call out the evil. Let's not lock them up for their speech, but let's call out and expose the evil, because it is an evil, and it is an evil, by the way, that is bringing violence to the streets of the United Kingdom.
No, I agree, and it really does show the left have lost the argument, because Charlie Kirk was all about debate, discussion, inviting you, giving your point of view. That's what he is about. And the left had no response to that, because they are devoid of any truth. And therefore, the only way to combat someone who engages with conversation that speaks truth is to remove them. And that's what they did. The same issue we have that happened 2 years ago. I grew up in Northern Ireland, being Northern Irish, grew up there, grew up in the Troubles. Over 25 years, there were maybe 3,000 people who died. Then I think of the 7th of October, 1,200 on one day. 40% of all of the deaths in 25 years in Northern Ireland happened on a single day. And that really blows me away, that level of violence, that level of loss. How do you respond to that as a society? And Israel have responded by saying, we are going to remove Hamas and we will do what has to be done. And then the world waves their arms and says, oh, no, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. Well, tell Israel what it should do whenever your neighbor wants your annihilation. And remember, Hamas means Islamic Resistance Movement. That is at the root. I go back to what I said before. This is a religious issue of Islam refusing to live side by side with Jews. And I think we need to be aware of that. And only again when we understand this is a religious war. It is not about land. It doesn't matter what land Israel give or take. That's not going to be enough. It is the annihilation of Israel. And when we see people on the streets of London every week for the last 2 years calling, in effect, for the annihilation of Israel, that makes you wonder, it makes you concerned, it makes you think, what society are we currently living in in the UK. That fills me with fear, fills me with dread. And that's why, although I may have many issues with Russell Brand, we need voices that are speaking up, that engage with people, that call them to the table of debate. And only then can we find a way past it.
Absolutely. And by the way, that's not me saying, oh, Russell Brand should be cancelled, Tucker Carlson should be cancelled, Candace Owens should be cancelled. No, absolutely not. Let's have the debate. Completely. Let's have the debate. There's a lot of debate to be had about the Middle East and Israel. But I think we've also got to call out evil when we see it. And I have seen a lot of it over the past 2 years. It's interesting, isn't it, that the moment Gary Neville makes the scourge of anti-white racism acceptable, lots of other people are now piling on. And they are the usual suspects. Of course they are. But I'm still going to call them out for it because I think it's disgusting. So you'll remember Sky Sports now facing a boycott, even though they intend to take no action against Neville for wrongly blaming last week's Manchester synagogue attack on middle-aged white men. Watch.
The division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing. Funnily enough, on one of my development sites last week, there was a Union Jack flag put up, and I took it down instantly.
And of course, because he is a white, middle-aged, angry man, dissatisfied with his own life, that has allowed now lots of other hard leftists to pile on white men in a way that if this was any other type of group, you know, they would be cancelled for. Look at Syra Khan on the Jeremy Vine show claiming that these middle-aged white men are also angry alcoholics with weight problems.
Well, I agree with him. I think I really applaud Gary Neville talking about topics that other people just shy away from. I see a lot of men on marches that want these flags up. They are white, angry men who are dissatisfied with their own lives, and so the only way they can do it is by going out and being like that. And I saw them, and there was evidence of these men probably drink a lot. I'm sorry, but just by the shape of their bodies. And I don't care if that sounds controversial. I'm making a judgment on their appearance, wearing capes. You know, they had the scars wrapped round as capes.
Oh, I see you.
You know, and I was kind of filming them, and they were giving me gestures, and I just thought, you're saddos, you're absolute saddos.
Hates middle-aged white men. Happens to be married to one though. James O'Brien got in on the act too.
Here's the Daily Mail saying, "Oh well, that puts Gary Neville at odds with Keir Starmer." How do you work that out, lads? Seriously, here's the person using the flag as a tool of racism. Here's the person saying we must never let them use the flag as a tool of racism. And here's Gary Neville saying some people are using the flag as a tool of racism. That puts him at odds with Keir Starmer, who said we should never let people use the flag as a tool of racism. You see how it works? Once you go into this weird tumble dryer of bigotry and prejudice, logic disappears.
Benjamin Butterworth attempted to defend the indefensible on GB News.
But what he is actually doing here is speaking as a middle-aged white man who is from a working-class background, who's extremely successful.
You can't.
And actually, he is speaking as someone who understands that part of the world.
He does not.
And he
That's
understands that there are people trying to exploit these tragedies, trying to exploit the attack on the synagogue, trying to exploit the attack on the mosque.
This is a multi-millionaire ex-premiership footballer.
He's exactly what this country
needs.
needs.
In an elitist bubble, who all the problems of this country do not touch this man. He is not.
He's made it to the top for pure hard work. We should knight Gary Neville, not condemn him.
Hypocrite. He's a champagne. He's actually admitted he's a champagne.
Oh, so now you hate successful people because they don't share your politics. What happened to free speech, Malone?
Who pretend to be working class people and to understand the British people. He has no clue about how the British people think.
But of course, as I always say, anti-white discrimination is the one form of racism which is just totally accepted in society. With Sky Sport, despite a massive boycott growing, escaping punishment altogether. This was the reporting on this. According to the Daily Mail, the comments not expected to trigger any punishment in relation to breaching Sky Sports guidelines on contributors' conduct on their own social media channel. But listen to the guidelines, right? Talent and contributors should be aware that social media communities are public forums and should not undertake activity that brings either their program or Sky into disrepute. Well, it clearly has. And again, I'm a free speech absolutist, so Gary Neville can say whatever he wants, but I just stress the fact that if this were a white man making the comments about another ethnic group, they would be cancelled so fast they wouldn't even get home. Now, what's interesting is that Gary Neville's own builders are furious about his comments. Look at this. The construction workers who had been flying the flag at his St. Michael's office redevelopment site in Bootle Street, Manchester, outraged by his intervention. One worker accused Neville, who has become a property developer, of being unpatriotic and suppressing free speech. He said that the former England footballer saw the Union flag as he walked past and immediately went to the gate and asked to speak to the construction site manager over the radio system so he could demand it was taken down. The employee exclusively told the Daily Mail he was walking past when he saw the flag flying on the 5th floor, along with a Moldovan flag and another one. He got on the radio to one of the workers and started asking why the Union Jack was up. He only mentioned the Union Jack, not the other two, and said it had to come down. So basically, Moldovan flag, absolutely fine. That can fly in Manchester. The Union Jack, bring it down. What a madman. Obviously, he is the boss, and we are not going to argue with him, but Union flags are normally put on building sites. It happens all over the country. Gary Neville played for England, but he won't let us put a flag up to celebrate the country where we live. It's caused a lot of anger. This wasn't discussed. We were just told. He didn't mention the Moldovan flag or the other. He only had a problem with the Union flag. Afterwards, we had to do toolbox chats for everyone about political messages on the building site. Basically, we had to explain why we can't have flags and we can't express our political views because Gary Neville says we can't. Now, not all football players are going along with this narrative. Kudos to Joey Barton and Matt Letizia.
Then we have this pillock, Neville. Now, he's crossed over with me because, as I said to him in Rio last night, look, I'm more than welcome to debate both of you. Let's roll for 2 hours, discuss any topic. Gary, you sat in a room with me when we did the Edge podcast. I'm not, don't need to be scared of me, but intellectually, I think you've got a lot to answer for here. You're a lad from Bury who has not once mentioned the grooming scandal that's affected not only your area, but lots of those surrounding the areas. You've also been at Davos where you were asked that and you said about, no care about politics. You pretended to not know that Donald Trump had been elected as the US president, the 47th US president for the second time. So, you said you were there to talk about something, somebody's tweeted and maybe the chat will tell us this Costello thing, which is maybe something to do with lining your own pockets again, you fucking money-grabbing little whore. Oh, the Qataris, but you still popped up out there and
actually attack the demographic of people that are paying his wages.
Do you think Sky will stand by him or support him?
Yeah, I think they'll stand by him and support him, yeah.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, they stood by Jamie Carragher when he spat at a young girl out the back of his car, so, it's not quite as bad as that. So I think Gary's got a pretty fair argument there if they try and get rid of him. He's basically attacked the demographic of people that are paying his wages, which is a bit strange. I think it depends on what side of the argument you fall on, and whether your side of the argument suits the agenda of the current media, which I think for the large part is very left leaning, and so if you're slightly right leaning, you won't be given the good grace to make mistakes that other people will be given.
To the superstar panel, Alan Miller of the Together Declaration, Peter McElvenna of the Hearts of Oak podcast. Peter, again, this is so interesting, isn't it? Because I'm not calling for Gary Neville to be sacked or cancelled, but what I am saying is astonishing here is the fact that an organisation like Sky, which is so quick to jump on any bandwagon, thinks that blatant anti-white racism and actual lies, by the way, about who caused a terror attack which resulted in deaths is acceptable.
No, it is. And I think Joey Barton is the male version of Kitty Hopkins. I really do. He just goes for it. Matt Letizia is much milder and gentle, but I love the way Joey just calls it out. And it's I mean, again, growing up in Northern Ireland, we had flags all over. You knew what area you were in, whether it was Union Jack, whether it was the Irish tricolour, or whether it was the Northern Irish flag. And people celebrated their identity. They celebrated their nationality. They celebrated their culture. And I always find it interesting coming to London and not really finding a celebration of culture in terms of flags. And the only time you see English flags is at a sporting event where supposedly it's non-racist if the rugby's on or football, but as soon as the final whistle goes, you're back to being racist if it was put up. I mean, and Sarah Khan, I mean, what? I mean, she's born in the UK. Her family are from Pakistan. Is it a Pakistani flag she puts up? What flag does she put up? And it goes back to, where are your roots? What culture do you celebrate? Surely the flag unites everyone living here. And yet there's so much anger that's perpetrated by Neville, by the white woke middle class that have just turned on their own culture, turned on their own society, and mock and ridicule those who actually love their country, actually would stand up for their country. Actually, those flying the flags would be the ones, if we are called to war, would be there lining up to conscript, where the people like Neville would be far back and just refusing to support that. Maybe Gary Neville should learn the national anthem. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, he didn't even sing the national anthem, did he? I mean, Alan Miller, where do you stand on this one? Because it does seem quite extraordinary to me that it is now just so accepted throughout our mainstream media. I mean, we look at those comments from Sarah Khan, for example, like, so acceptable to just describe all white men, you know, like fat, alcoholic, racist, responsible for a terror attack. It just feels like it's open season on middle-aged white men. And Alan, I mean, maybe you fall into that category, so I'm wondering how you feel about it.
Don't be ageist, Dan. Yeah, I think it's really despicable and it's really disgusting. And what Gary Neville has managed to encapsulate has been the elitist contempt of the public that's been developing over several decades, actually. But we talk about a technocratic elite, the Uniparty, but a group of people that are very similar, and they pour scorn on the great public, the British public, the everyday people that are down our streets, the people that keep the country going and that make it so wonderful, that have great virtues. And I'm very proud and feel very lucky to have grown up here, and think it's one of the most wonderful experiences. Of course, there are things that could be much better, and I'm gobby and I often argue against the problems here, but I am very grateful, and I think it's a remarkable place. And one of the best things about it is the people. So I think it's contemptuous and disgusting, but it reflects the overview of the elite who keep doing this. And Emily Thornberry in Rochdale, I think it was in 2014, with the white vans and the idea of gammons and scum and far right and racist and white van man, and on it goes, right? These terms of derision, where really we're the backbone. It's the public are the people that make Britain what it is. And I think this is a really important moment, like with the discussion around the digital ID will solve all problems. It will solve the boats.
Oh, I know.
Right, this is the moment, right, where we'll actually see what it will do is intensify all the things you've been discussing on this show today. The problems of censorship, the spying and scrutiny on the right kind of attitudes on banking or on personalities, the fact that we'll be able to survey and scan everyone everywhere, and the idea that a government that has no solution to deal with borders or housing or resources or anything, but at the same time wants to smear the public, that then it will have some kind of central digital infrastructure. And now they're like saying that directors have all got to do it, 8 million of them. So that's why together we're saying no to digital ID, and we'd love all your viewers to be involved in that campaign. And I think because of all the things you've been discussing today, it's even more essential that we're aware of how people that stir up, they say they want to stop racial incitement, and yet they stir up racial incitement. They say, you know, you could, the fact that Keir Starmer could only call the person a vile individual and couldn't name what it was that was really responsible for it, and the fact that so many people have danced around it, and Gary Neville then says the problem with people putting up British flags, astonishing with the gaslighting and the contempt. But you see, imagine a situation where we're having this conversation and you can just get switched off, or you could be prevented from going to a certain area, or you don't get to go traveling as a consequence of being on a central surveillance state, a biometric surveillance state by this state. And I think that is something that it's great that so many people have said they don't want to have happen, but we've all got to fight against that and keep celebrating the virtues and the brilliant things here, and actually criticizing and ridiculing and making our voice heard together. The good thing, like, I know there's a protest tomorrow in Whitechapel because of Tower Hamlets. The pink ladies are going to be there. I have first-hand experience with Tower Hamlets and their censoriousness and shutting down. They did it with nightlife. I've seen what they did with stopping filming going on there, a bit like Salman Rushdie moment because of Brick Lane, the film at the time, and the whole idea you're not allowed to say certain things or do certain things. And now an attempt, and this is the point I was referring to before, when we start banding around terms like extremist all the time and using that to shut people down, it will invariably come to all of us. And those who happen to be on the left, who are entitled to their views, but they should be very conscious of that cancel culture, because it will, as it has done, but it will start coming to engulf everyone. So I applaud the fact that the ladies in pink will be there tomorrow. I'd like to show my face there and support, but the women are doing a brilliant job, and encourage everyone in Britain to be courageous, right? When it's scary, and it can be very scary, right? And people go after your jobs, or they go after you. You've had first-hand experience of this, Dan. Many of us have had experience of it. But the more people that stand up and speak and say we're going to engage and discuss this, and say that we're going to thrash it out and we're not going to be silenced, and hold those who are promoting these ideas and really responsible, because in the end, there are lots of issues at hotels, there are a lot of issues at HMOs, there's lots of issues, but the real people responsible are the people that have allowed this to happen, that have encouraged it, that have hoisted these ideas onto everyone, then have the temerity to say, well, the problem is those who want to divide us, right? They've been the ones that have created this very problematic situation, and the more that we can address it and address it for what it is, and begin to come to deal with it and get to grips with it, the better for everyone. For that, we're going to need to speak freely and definitely not have digital ID.
Yes, very well put. And togetherdeclaration.org is the address. There you see it. No to digital ID cards, yes to a digital bill of rights. Now, this row is really interesting, because it's probably between two people who you like and two people who you assume to be on the same side. But when it comes to Tommy Robinson, Mike Graham of Talk TV has been a thorn in the side of the activists for a long time, buying into, some would say, the mainstream media narrative. And so when Mike Graham launched an impassioned defense on Talk TV about the Islam religion, Tommy wasn't having it. He posted, Mike, another one, who lambasted and attacked us for being braver than him and years ahead of him. This is the video that Tommy was referring to.
The only cult of religion in the world that tells you to kill other people because they're not Islamic is Islam. There is no other question about it. Christian people don't go around murdering Muslims because they're not Christian. Hindus don't go around murdering Christians because they're not Hindu. Muslims go around murdering other people because they're not Muslim. And that is a simple truth, I'm afraid. And the sooner you expect to accept that, then the sooner we can all start fixing the problem. Because in my view, there are too many people like Jihad al-Shami in this country who have come here from parts of the Middle East, parts of the Far East, who don't understand that killing people is wrong, who think that killing people is okay. And Keir Starmer, as the Israeli government have said this morning, is complicit in all of this.
And so it probably is time for there to be a national debate about whether a whole load of people in the mainstream media, in positions of authority, need to 180 and actually publicly apologise to Tommy Robinson. But of course, what's depressing is that people who I think should know better, like anyone on the centre-right, and maybe it's hard to put the Conservative Party on the centre-right these days, they're probably on the centre-left in reality. But why do you keep on turning someone who has been proven right on the issue of radical Islam time and again into your enemy. But that's exactly what James Cleverly, the shadow foreign secretary, no, he's not shadow foreign secretary, is he? What was his new job? Can't remember, I'll check. But that is exactly what he said at the shadow secretary of state for, I'm not sure what, but this is exactly what he said at Conservative Party conference today.
Just wondered if I could get your response to Israel inviting Tommy Robinson over in response to the attack in Manchester last week.
So first of all, I don't think we should describe it as Israel. It is a member of the Israeli government. Obviously, there's a broad coalition within the Israeli government. I have no doubt that a number of other people in the Israeli government are as uncomfortable with that as I am. I think it's a foolish move on behalf of the individual that did that. Tommy Robinson and others of his ilk are now wrapping themselves up in a pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli posture because basically it's an opportunity to do what they really want to do, which is to be anti-Muslim. So I think it's an error. I've said so. And Tommy Robinson is no friend of the Jewish community, whether it be in London or anywhere, whether it be in the UK or anywhere else in the world.
Shadow Living Up Secretary. But I mean, just an extraordinary thing to say. An extraordinary thing to say. And also just shows you that even amongst people who should know better, there is still this mainstream media philosophy when it comes to Tommy Robinson. They do need to wake up. And I give serious credit to the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, Sharon Haskell, who had to face the truly ghastly lefty Cathy Newman on Channel 4 News last night. And as the Grift report explained, Newman called him far right, smearing him yet again while asking the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel to condemn her colleague for hosting him in a few weeks, saying he is to blame for a lot of division on the streets. But she fired back. This is how you deal with the mainstream media. Watch.
If you would condemn your ministerial colleague Amichai Chikli for hosting the far-right activist Tommy Robinson in a few weeks' time, he's been responsible for a lot of those divisions that you're seeing played out on the streets.
Look, I have to say, the UK itself have accepted even people who were criminal.
But I'm asking you about Tommy Robinson. Would you condemn your colleague
for hosting
that
you have accepted into the UK, a person called Jihad, Holy Islamic War, who murdered 2 Jews?
He was born in this country.
Who was on bail because of rape charges. He's from Assyrian descent. Mm-hmm. Okay? Look.
So you won't condemn your colleague for hosting Tommy Robinson?
No. People are entitled and allowed to speak out their mind.
Sharon Haskell, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh my God. To my superstar panel together, Declaration founder Alan Miller and Peter McElvenna of the Hearts of Oak podcast. Peter, seriously, I mean, number one, this is getting boring. It's becoming increasingly irrelevant now that people can be in the independent media. I mean, gosh, we were both at Unite the Kingdom doing our own media work. People could watch live what happened on Outspoken, make their own judgment. It certainly was not a far right or a divisive event as Channel 4 News might want to present. But what about the people on the right, Peter? Like, what about people like Mike Graham and James Cleverly, who you might agree with on other issues, but when it comes to Tommy Robinson, seem to stick to a particular baked-in narrative?
Well, when they say Tommy Robinson is ilk, I'm part of that ilk, I guess. So I back him for 18 years. And yeah, you see, I saw one of the headlines, even The Spectator said, Jews don't need Tommy Robinson. I mean, I would say that Jewish people really need a lot of support because the onslaught they face, and those who will step up and actually support Jews to have the right to live in their state, surely that is a positive thing. And James Cleverly being the being the arbitrator, the person who decides who's a friend of Israel or the Jewish people. Seriously, is that his role? He is the one that decides who Israel can be friends with. He's like the playground bully, pointing out who can be friends with each other. Come on, grow up a little bit and let's have an open debate. I would love Tommy to actually open this up and bring lots of people over. The Israeli minister Amichai Chakli, if I got that right, my new hero, my hero of the week, for standing up and asking Tommy to come. And it's interesting how even the Independent termed it. They said Jewish leaders criticize Israeli government. They're trying to draw a wedge between the Jewish community and between the Israeli government. And that's what they're trying to do to attack it. And they said leaders of Britain's Jewish community have criticised, and who are these leaders? And then it says the Board of Deputies and the Jewish Leadership Council said Robinson represents the very worst of Britain. Really? Are those on the streets calling for the destruction of Israel, are they not the very worst in Britain? Or those who've turned a blind eye to 50 years of grooming gangs where hundreds of thousands of girls have been mass raped, are those not the worst of Britain? Seriously, is Tommy Robinson the worst of Britain? Is that the state of journalism we're at? And yeah, you look at many people just out of fear of associating with Tommy, and the state have tried to make him an enemy of the state. They've done all they can, and yet his support is there. You go with Tommy anywhere, and he is stopped continuously, like every 20 seconds. People want a selfie. There's adulation. There's respect for him speaking out and putting his life on the line to stand up for those who are disadvantaged and speaking truth. And that's what the public want from their members of parliament, but they don't, because our MPs are generally fairly pathetic and are looking at their careers more than they're looking at truth. And Tommy isn't looking at the career because he doesn't have one, and is just standing up for what's right. And people see that, they respect it. And shame on all our media, shame on all our politicians for taking pot shots at Tommy instead of actually asking what is he talking about mass immigration, about the grooming gangs, etc. What is he talking about, and does he have a point? If so, let's address this instead of demonizing the person who speaks truth and rings true with the British public.
Yeah, and it could help your cause, couldn't it? I mean, Alan Miller, do you not think it's more important for people like Mike Graham and James Cleverly to unite against real enemies? I find it really hard for them to see how I find it really hard to see how they can view Tommy Robinson as an enemy here.
So, I mean, I don't really want to speak for anyone else because they're going to have to argue for themselves and make their own point. I think for a long time, people have said all sorts of things about some people and we often hear people repeating things that people have heard about people rather than listening either to the content of what they're saying, or what they're doing. Now, look, Tommy himself has said that some of the things he's done historically, who hasn't done some things historically that they don't think is brilliant or illuminates the best of what they are. I know that lots of people who've changed their positions, there's lots more people now who travel and work together and operate together that often had very different views before, or they may still have different views about a number of things, but around some core principles they share views. I think a couple of things are really interesting, right? That you've got a prime minister who says that there should be a recognition of a state of Palestine before refugees are given back, right? So there's obviously a lot of concern for many people, not just necessarily Israelis, but people elsewhere with that statement. There's also a highly politicized discussion around Palestine, or whatever you want to call Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, that whole region in this country that often is not even about that. It's often from people who don't know what river to what sea we're talking about, and often is much more about an attack on the very foundations of Britain and Western society, and it's an idea that they're with them, not us. They don't often talk about Sudan or Yemen or Nigeria or India or all sorts of areas where many attacks on
and the
Syria,
deaths of Christian.
Yeah, well, Christian and others, and millions of people are killed, at citizens and children and women and babies. But there's this unique criticism of what's going on there for what's going on, and I think that at the same time, look, like in every area, people elect their own leaders, and you know, in the exchange also that Tommy's had between different people, right, with Heidi background and others, there's been a lot that's been flying around, right? And I think that the thing is, we've got a number of issues to deal with, and the only way you deal with them honestly is to thrash them out and debate them. It's very easy to just name call people, and it's very easy to put them in a box. And it might be that some names some people call people are actually fitting, right? I'm not saying you got outlaw name calling, by the way, right? Because that's part of free speech too. But it's not very grown up, and it doesn't help us. And what we need to do is be able to get to the content of the virtue of the argument. We need to debate it. And the majority of that, and this is where it really falls to I think, right, that people say left and right, down and all. I'm not so much in that, right? What I'm in the view of is people that believe in sovereignty, they believe in our nation state, they believe in values, they believe in civilization. They do not believe in something that wants to shut that down, whether it be globalist technocrats who prefer Davos to Parliament, or whether it be people who like radical jihadism. And the fact that we've had a problem dealing with those, the second lot of issues, particularly in those discussions around what's happened in some of our inner city areas, in our prisons in particular, because young men don't want to carry on fighting, and then there's a radical infiltration of it there, and then they come out in our institutions, in some of the kind of councils. If we see even the Green Party, the kind of vice leader gets up and shouts Allahu Akbar, and then he's now the vice leader of that party. Is it about green issues, or is it something else? Across the board, and we've had an issue that anyone who wants to address some of those questions will then be branded and presented as some. And I would say to everyone, it's very difficult and uncomfortable, right, when you have to be responsible and accountable for your ideas. Some will behave really badly, right, and they'll want to attack, and they say that words are violence. No, violence is violence. If anything, from Charlie Kirk and what we've seen, right, we all have to stand even stronger and firmer. And I've got to say, like that clip, of that disgusting clip, if that guy's a man who thinks that he's going to like start putting it on a woman, like he's got a t-shirt. I didn't see what happened beforehand. It's always something to think about with video clips, right? But you can see how he's behaving in that. Now, I just want to say to everyone, firstly, believe in what you believe in, and let's openly thrash it out calmly. If you want to get in a boxing ring, do that. If you want to go to be in the military, do that. If you want to go to a war zone, do that. But if you're a man, don't start trying to put it on a woman. And I think it's just really reflective, right, of how much things have denigrated, right? This idea that some people have got that somehow they've got the complete answer and they can conduct themselves like that. And I would love to encourage everyone to hold the line and be as robust. We are, after all, still fellow citizens with one another. And I do not want to go down a road where some of us might, I'm just going to say this, right? We might feel more comfortable behaving in a certain way and dealing with that, right? It's not going to get us anywhere. And I think the other thing is, just like I want to say this, after at Charlie Kirk's memorial when I was there and subsequently, you can see how stoic and well-behaved people are and calm, as are some demonstrations and some vigils. And then you see others where people are not behaving like that. And I really think that it's important to call things out for what they are, to have to hold
no
people.
cities were burnt down, Alan, after Charlie Kirk's death. Very different.
Yes, exactly.
After George Floyd's death.
Exactly. And we all know George Floyd's name. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I ask people to name the man that was murdered, the 61-year-old in Manchester. Most people could not. There are reasons for all these things, right? And that's the point about just smearing people. Look, I've gone on demonstrations against ULEZ or LTNs, and people have gone, "Oh, that's Alan Miller. He's this anti-thisser or thisser," right? And they've heard this thing, and I try and bring people along. And when I've had people say that this person's racist, whatever, I've brought my black mates along, said, you ask him if it, because I've been told this, you've heard this, you ask him that, and you speak to them. And I think the thing is that we need to thrash this out, right? And we're not allow the people who've tried to dominate the agenda and say any question of it, like the Labour Party conference did, is racist. But I will say this as well, Dan, right? I think that the British public have been very clear. They're ahead of everyone. They're ahead of every party, the new parties as well, every group, they are very clear. They've fed up with being gaslit and called names. They know what's going on. They've been clear for a long time about what they want to happen with borders. They want the government out their private lives. They want a decent economy. They want borders protected. They don't want to be called names. They don't want over scrutiny. And they want the government just to get on with what the government should do and not in their private lives. And I think the thing is that the more that this goes down this road, right, we've just got to be careful about certain things. One, everyone and anyone that asks for more laws and lawfare to shut things down, right? We have to politically win the arguments with our fellow citizens, not just go, well, this lot or that lot or this ilk or that ilk are no good, so now we're going to have rules for those extremists, because we're all going to be extremists, right, in some people's view. And these things are happening at a huge pace really quickly, right? And I think that's why it's essential. I mean, your show's covered so much today, and it's always something to learn from and fascinating, right? And it's also very unnerving because we see what we're dealing with. But I really want to encourage everyone as much as possible. Let's all try and get outside those we agree with. Let's try and engage and debate with those we don't agree with. And here I'm going to be doing a debate at the Battle of Ideas with one of the guys from Labour Together, who's championing the proposals
digital
for digital ID. Right. So the thing is, it's important that we do that.
Yeah, which is what Charlie Kirk wanted to do. I mean, he tried to get Van Jones face to face in the final days of his life. And I do think it's so important, Alan. I guess the key message I take from that today is let's just be very careful of Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, saying, oh, we want to have these new laws to control protests, and we're doing it to protect the Jewish community. You know, that's what she's going to say, isn't she? We're doing it to protect the Jewish community. Actually, those laws will be used to shut down protests by Together Declaration, regular protests outside the migrant hotels. So let's just think very, very carefully about what Labour claims it's doing for the Jewish community on October the 7th, and actually what it's really doing to target free speech altogether. But both, thank you so much. Hearts of Oak podcast, you know I love it. I have appeared on it many, many times. So do subscribe and download. And Alan Miller of the brilliant Together Declaration, which you can find at togetherdeclaration.org, campaigning against digital ID. Thank you both so much. Okay, we're going to reveal our Greatest Britain Union Jackass in just one moment, though. First, thank you for your super chats. Mr. Steve 170 says Jenrick will be Tory leader before the next election. He is, of course, words only. Tory party is too split to do anything. Political tactics to get votes. Alex Marmon says get Mike Graham on Outspoken. That would be great. And welcome to Outspoken Plus Lisa Brown, Elvia van der Watt, and Older Taylor. Okay, a reminder of your Union Jackass nominees. Kamali Melbourne of Sky News, or Sly News, as I call it, nominated by Kaz Quinn for trying to ambush Robert Jenrick. Syra Khan, nominated by Matt Cassidy 048, who says, white angry men are fair game. We had murder on our streets again, but the MSM have managed to turn blokes into the problem. And James O'Brien, nominated by Real Mick Cass, who has given him a new nickname, which I love, James No Brain, for defending Gary Neville. And your results are in. In third place with 8% of the vote, Kamali Melbourne of Sly News. The runner-up with 24% of the vote, Syra Khan, after her rant about white men. But your Union Jackass today was 68% of the vote. It is LBC's James O'Brien. The Greatest Britain today, nominated by Scott Fly 230. Simon Jordan. He says he is a brilliant man with a brilliant mind. His thoughts on Gary Neville are well worth a listen. And if you missed them, make sure you go and watch Outspoken from yesterday, which is in our live tab on YouTube, because I play them for you and we have a big debate about it too. Okay, we're moving over to Substack now for the uncancelled after show. Prince William went white with anger after learning of Meghan Markle's sick Diana death stunt in Paris, as the fake Duchess uses the MSM to try and push back over her sickening stunt. We'll reveal the truth about what happened with our royal mastermind, Angela Levin. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble move over to Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. Remember too, Outspoken now available as a podcast, so do make sure you sign up for our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you actually listen to your podcast. Please do rate and review us on those platforms, though. It's really important. And we will be back with you live tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So hit subscribe on YouTube or Rumble. Turn on your notification bell to be alerted to our new episodes. Okay, thank you for your company today. Have a wonderful night. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.